We are videoing this for Hanford and Tulare campuses, so I've got a little mic lapel. We also have another mic if anyone wants to ask questions or speak. Tim is going to be assisting me. But we also have our whole budget committee here, and the budget committee really is who guides the process of the above base resource request ranking and submits those rankings on to District Governance Senate. So they have a lot of input too. We go through a month of quite a bit of work. There's actually about 3 months of work, but a month that's pretty in-depth as we really rank the above base requests. So I have a few items I'll just go through. First, I wanted to let you know that this year in this budget we have $250,000 allocated for above base resource requests throughout the district. We also have a new rubric. So I just attached the new one to a follow-up email that went out. It has not been approved by District Governance Senate. It was finished by Budget Committee last spring, but the formal approvals went with a first read last DGS, and then they'll approve it this next Tuesday, I'm assuming. And just wanted you folks to know a request from, I think it was Carol Enns last year that our Budget Committee looked at, was we used to give you a highest ranking if you demonstrated clear, significant links to district objectives. That's the new one. Clear links to multiple district objectives. And multiple meant more than one. So a lot of you are really smart. So you would just list 2 or 3, and you knew that you got a higher ranking from us, whether they really linked to that district objective or not. So we changed that, and we want it to be a significant link or links to district objectives. So it needs to be significant, which means we're going to really look at it and see how it ties. And then the lower rankings are a moderate link to a district objective, a poor connection, or no connection. And as we're talking about the linkage, I'm going to jump to something else. We'll go back to this, but we do need you as you're listing an action on your program review, and for that action, you may also be requesting a resource request. So if you're down to a resource request, when it's asking you to tie it to or list a district objective that this ties to, it will also ask, why is this resource required for this action? In that area, we need you, if you can, to give a narrative of how it ties to the district objective. Sometimes it's quite a few steps up the ladder. You know, your credit card reading machines, it's hard to say how that improves students something. But they need to be able to use their credit cards to pay for classes and to buy lunch, and that allows them, etc. So anyway, or it may just be the operations under Objective 4.2. But that's an important part. The rubric, how many of you this is new or have not submitted a resource request before? So we have a few that may not be as familiar with the rubric. We also have 2 of our students here today, which serve on our budget committee, and they're new. So thanks, guys, for being here. So this comes out of our resource allocation manual. I think you're all familiar that we have 3 governance manuals. And Mr. Tim, would you mind pulling that up? If you go to governance, yeah, he's my Vanna today. Yes. So if you go to the home page, About COS, upper left there, just go to governance. Oh, are you doing some display? Is that what you were doing? Okay. Yeah. And then scroll down on the governance page. And at the bottom, we have our 3 manuals, if you ever want to grab one and read it. And so the resource allocation manual is what we use as a district to guide our resource allocations. And it explains how we're funded and goes into a lot of detail, but it also talks about the resource request, the above base resource request process. Okay, so I wanted to show you that. In the resource allocation manual, at the end of the whole section for above base is this rubric. And so you're going to be ranked on whether the funding request is linked to district objectives through its associated action, whether the action is linked to the action linked to the funding request is related to course or program or department outcomes. So it might be student learning outcomes or service area outcomes, or there may be a specific department outcome that you are trying to achieve. Resource request is connected to achieving the action, so it obviously needs to have a connection there. Data support the rationale for the action and need for the resource request, and we'll get into data in a minute, but it does behoove you to gather data that supports your need. And data, I'll mention this, data may not be wonderful charts and tables or pages and pages of data. It may be all other classrooms have an Elmo and we do not. It might be as simple as that. We had, I think LRC, Mary Catherine, you're here. Last year, someone mentioned that you had excellent data in one of your requests. And Tim and I were trying to remember which one it was, but we couldn't. Do you, all of them? Did you have a favorite, or can you think of an example of what you had attached? Because it's been a year. That's okay. Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So data, the budget committee will selectively go into data sometimes. We have a big process that we go through. I'm going to just show you briefly. So the budget committee goes in and we extract all the resource requests out of program review through the system, and Tim helps us. Tim, our Dean of Technology. This is like, you can't see how small this print is, but that's page 1 of like page 30. And we extract all the data, all the components that are important to us ranking on the rubric. And believe me, we got to know this thing really well, where each request was, because we assign request numbers. So we had like 30 pages of this, and how the technology feasibility went, how the facilities feasibility. That doesn't even include the data. So just to share with you, we go to data when we need a little more support or we're researching something, and if you have data, it just helps us. So that's part of the ranking process. And then lastly, the funding request has been ranked by the service area. And the biggest portion of that is instructional council that ranks the academic services request, because they will have, I can't even remember, I think we brought 40 or 50 forward, or 60 last time, and they had narrowed it down a little bit, but there were hundreds of requests that were gathered, and then instructional council will rank them themselves. They'll rank them 1 through whatever that they're submitting. Some they don't even submit, but they send them to us then. So for administrative services, we might have 5, and it's very simple to prioritize. Student services has a student services council that also ranks, but they only have 5 or 6 usually requests. And then President's office usually has 1 or 2, so it's kind of easy. Any questions on the rubric? Okay, we're going to keep moving, but familiarize yourself. Biggest point is, if you're going to request something, go ahead and see ahead of time, how is my request going to score? And look at that rubric and know that the budget committee is using that rubric to score. What we do is we finally then list all the requests, and we have cost estimates, final cost estimates if it's changed, and then each person gives it a ranking. Then we take the average and total it there, and it's strictly a ranking process then that we submit to District Governance Senate for their final approval. And they have, I think each year, first year they took one that had made our budget cutoff, and they moved it to the had not, because we didn't quite have enough money. The second year, we found out that under the instructional council ranking, there had been a misunderstanding, so something had been ranked higher. 2 very similar items from the drama department, or art, music, and drama, and they flipped those. So DGS might make a small change, but generally they're honoring the rankings from the budget committee. So, okay. The next thing that might be of interest to you is the fact that you're going to request one of 4 things. The main thing you need to know is this is not the venue to request ongoing resources. It's one-time items, and it's not meant to be small supplies or something that would be paid out of a supply budget. Gather a bunch of supply needs, lump them together to a $600 request or something like that. New this year in the resource allocation manual, we've put a $500 minimum for above base resource allocation requests. It doesn't mean that you can't ask for a $250 item. If you need it, put it in your program review. It just means it might be funded by your dean or your department chair, because we felt like we needed to put a threshold. It's hard to be ranking all those many small requests that might flow through. Another item, we've had trouble as a budget committee, so we revised the resource allocation manual this year to request that instructional council or other ranking secondary bodies do not split up requests, because you have prepared a request, and if it goes forward and gets split up into 5 different requests, then for the most part, all 5 of those are going to rank the same way to us because they were written in the same body of work. So as you're writing, just know that instructional council may not take your item, and what they do is split it up. Usually it's smaller equipment needs, and they think they'll never fund all 8 of these, so let's split them up into 8 separate requests, and maybe 4 of them will get funded. It's what will work, and how we've rewritten the resource allocation manual is please lump a few smaller things together that maybe make sense and go together, but just know your resource request is going to go through as one request. So, all right, let's get back to what definitions of categories. The 4 categories are instructional equipment. I'm going to read you examples, but if you ever get confused, it's in the resource allocation manual too. Examples are books, library materials, classroom desks, classroom chairs, industrial technology equipment, machines and equipment used in instruction, such as cooktops and gas ranges, sewing machines, welding machines, drafting printers, lab equipment, maps, and models. So instructional equipment obviously covers a lot of what the requests are. Non-instructional equipment is, there's a lot there. Vehicles used to transport students or staff, trailers used to transport equipment, gators, mowers, golf carts, equipment and tools used for maintenance operations, custodial grounds, office equipment, shelves and furniture, signage, equipment and machinery not used for instructional purposes such as fax machines, calculators, shredders. So facilities, you can request a facility above base resource. Storage sheds, improvements to curbing or walkways, adding room dividers, changing room layouts, carpeting, painting, window coverings, shelving and equipment, or equipment storage that is built in, attached to a wall, shade structures, where's Frank? Athletic equipment of a permanent nature, a pool springboard or a pool cover, bleachers, etc. So that's facilities. Those are a little harder to fund sometimes because your request may be fairly well thought out, but what we need you to do is make sure you've gotten a bid from, a qualified vendor or contractor. Work with facilities, better yet, first off, if you're looking for a construction contractor, have them get you a bid and then submit that, because we really do have trouble when someone assumes it'll cost about this much, but then our facilities feasibility comes back costing maybe 3 times as much or something like that. So do that homework ahead of time if you can. And technology is the last one. Software, hardware, peripheral equipment, audio-visual equipment needed for the support of smart classrooms, computers, laptops, wireless infrastructure or wireless modems, printers, phone systems, microphones, smart boards, ceiling wall projectors, video streaming, and recording equipment. So sorry if I went in depth there a little much, but it's helpful to know because we do get that mixed up a lot, and then we in Budget Committee have to kind of move it to another column to say, no, this is technology. We need to do technology feasibility and make sure that this is going to work. So, all right, so those are our 4 areas. Steps and timelines. Basically, your steps are one important thing. To have your program review, I think September 15th is our due date. Ooh, that's coming right up this year, to your supervisor. The official due date is October 15th, but I thought I understood that program review moved it up to a 2-step process. Anyone know? So it's, but initial is supposed to be done by September 15th? To your supervisor. Okay, that's coming right up. Where are all my managers? All right, so we have our first step where requests for above base are generated either through program review, and this is all in the resource allocation manual, but if you look at this, there's actually a second way, and this has never happened yet. And when it does happen, Budget Committee is going to have to come up with some proper steps for it. But basically, you can have the resource come through the strategic plan, through program review, and then get a resource allocation. But there are a few divisions or needs outside of program review. The only ones I can think of off the top of my head are Tulare Provost and Hanford Provost. They don't do program review, and sometimes they just need something for their site. We also had something recently, and I don't remember if it was very institutional. It was like, well, what department would that go through? And so it's a little tricky. But anyway, so that's your request. It comes through program review. Step 2 is the divisions review the above base, and they try and see if they can fund anything out of their division budget. Step 3 is service area managers lead a review and prioritize a list. So there's 4 service areas, so it's basically the 3 vice presidents and the president, academic services, student services, administrative services, and then president's office, public information, and research and institutional effectiveness. So everything that's under the president. So those 4 areas, then prioritize them. So if you want to bribe anyone, those are the people you bribe, just kidding. But they'll send that prioritized list then on to the budget committee, and the budget committee receives these 4 lists, and then they send anything that's technology onto technology and technology committee to say, is this feasible? Does this really cost this much? Or does this technological equipment require $12,000 worth of infrastructure and recabling or something like that? Right? And does this oven for a culinary class, do we not have the amperage that's needed for that? So we have to do that homework. And that, we have a timeline here, but I think we send it on to them before December 15th. We have this page with all these timelines. And then we, as a budget committee, then we rank, and we revise the resource allocation manual again to basically have those 5 things that you saw in the rubric. And it says that these are the items that they are weighted on to the extent they're justified by those 5. And then at its direction, we added, at its discretion, budget committee may give priority requests that reflect an external mandate or will correct a documented safety hazard. We don't really envision that coming in a lot, but on a rare occasion it might. Most of the time the district's going to try and find funding for that anyway, so especially if it's a safety hazard. So, and then after budget committee's done, it goes on to district governance senate, and then the president makes the final approval, and it's presented to the board for information. So any questions on that timeline? Your requests are finished by mid-September, hopefully, October 15th at the latest. Then this whole cycle starts. You will be informed of your whether your request is granted between March 15th and March 30th, but before March 30th. It'll go to the board in March. And you're going to be informed, and you're going to be given a budget line, and we have to have you spend that money by June 30th, because the very nature of this is an annual cycle. On a rare occasion, we can carry forward the funds, but that's not our intent. And unfortunately, we've had some things in the past that people just didn't really think about, or larger facilities projects that really couldn't get done. So we're trying to, this year you might have gotten a notification, hey, you're going to lose it, use it or lose it. So that was a little bit of a challenge last time. Okay, so we talked about you cannot request ongoing needs through above base. What if you have a need that requires some ongoing funding with it? Human Resources last year requested a special software for posting, basically making online job applications, tracking. But they also needed $4,000 a year for the software costs. And they were able to, they didn't do it in program review, I had to go back to them, but what we're seeking is do this in program review, document how is that money coming, where's it coming from. They were able to get the president to commit from his budget that $4,000 a year. But if you don't have it committed, just know that your request is not going to be granted, because we can't grant ongoing funds as the budget committee. That's not what that pot of money is able to do. So we've got the 500 minimum. It's also not intended to replenish a budget already spent or something already purchased. If you really needed something this summer you bought it, August 10th, and now you think you'll apply for a above base and get it reimbursed. That's not the intention. Not for supplies. We kind of recommend a $40,000 maximum. Again, you folks need to request whatever you need to request, but to really make it feasible for this process, if we have a bunch of $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 requests, we can only grant 3 or 4 of them. And we really do want to honor all the many requests that have come in. So in our minds, about 40,000. It's not a firm limit. If you make those requests, you may have something that costs 200,000 that you really need for your program. My understanding is program review is where you need to get that documented. So don't let that scare you. Just know that it may not come through the above base process if it's above 40. We've got the data. We talked about attaching data. We're going to actually go through some examples here. Oh, you are so kind. And this is my Christmas mug that I'm drinking in September. And is it too warm in here, or is it just me? You guys are good? Warm? Okay. A little comfortable, kind of. Anyway, thank you. Just the main thing I wanted to share was remember that we want to know why the resource is required for this action. In that narrative, kind of use that chance to tie it in. So we're gonna start in on a program review right now, and Tim is going to go to technology, and we're toggling around an Apple Mac, so not quite as familiar, but.
Have y'all been to program review training that basically went through the TrackTech system?
Once.
Those of you that haven't, it's very intuitive. So once you get into it,
It's intuitive.
So this is technology services from last year, really, homepage. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through.
Oh, you know what? Sorry about that.
One.
You want me to hold it? Wait, no, you got to have a hand.
Is it? I do. I have 2.
Okay.
Who knew?
I was going to be his Vanna, but okay.
Can you hear me now? Good? Good. Okay, so we're going to go through one action and the resource request that is going to support that action. I'm going to pick add wireless access point. So I can go from the front page of technology services, I can go directly to that action, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. You could also bring up the side navigation tool, go to unit planning, go to actions and resource requests, and then actions, then yada yada. So there is a very complicated way to go through it, or there's a very simple way, your choice. So I'm just going to go through the front page and go directly to the action.
We think.
It's a long way to Pittsburgh, where TrackData is located.
Did it freeze up on us, or do we know? Those darn Macs? Huh. In Tim's defense, we were in here earlier testing this, and it worked fine. Huh.
COS ACAD, really?
I don't know. Okay, while he's working on that, we'll try and pull that up. Any specific questions for the? Yeah.
Well, I'm curious about where a proposal would rightly be housed or come from, be generated by. For instance, I'm thinking in our building, in the Sycamore building, I'm not sure if the wireless access is really as good as it should be.
Oh,
If there's something like I don't even know if this is a thing, a wireless upgrade.
In which building?
Sycamore.
No, it's not. It's not. It's right at.
So we don't have good wireless.
Correct.
Do we have any wireless access?
You do have some wireless, and along with this is an old action. And just this last year, this is kind of an aside.
Yeah, on an aside. Normally, no. Yeah. Normally, you should mention it to technology and say, we need this, and then just so we can share. What he was trying to link to when it decided not to link is his division's request for increasing wireless access throughout the district. And I think last year, wasn't that one of the 4?
You'll see.
Was it one of the 4 last year?
Yes.
Yeah. So last year they did receive and they were granted 57,000, which I just said 40,000 max. That was one of the highest we've ever done for 4 buildings. So I think starting this fall, before we went to actually put them in, that was one of the carryover items that we allowed carryover because we realized we needed professionals to come in and tell us how much do we need and where do we really need to place it. Not that they're not professionals, but they have 120 things on their plate every day. So we had a company come in and create a very thorough audit of where our wireless needs are and what the capacities are and what we should actually be putting in. Having said that, so now we're going to start with putting it in. So that's a good question, though. That's really a fair question. So go for it.
Okay. So the action itself is add wireless access points, and for that we are asking for resources. And we had asked for John Muir, Sycamore, because we got paid off, right? Kern and Sierra. So,
whoops. It just toggled.
So the resource description, we'll go right to it here.
So he's hitting an edit button there, and if you were in tracked out building your request, you would hit that edit button.
Or if it's a new one, you would add this,
you can
add a resource description for the resource that you need, okay? But we already have one. So this is the resource that we need. And it is, just as we were talking about earlier, it is an active request. It is a technology portion, a technology request. And there's also, in tracked out, there's these little help pop-ups that come up that came from the program review committee. So each one of these fields has help attached to it directly. So it was technology. A wireless access point for John Muir, Sycamore, Kern, and Sierra. Why is this resource required? Well, access points are required for wireless connections. This is not a good one because this is the one that will have, this is where we want you to point out why this resource attaches to the action that attaches to some objective.
A district objective, yeah.
And so we'd like the narrative right in there, okay? And then any notes, these would be for you, and so far we haven't seen anybody use them. And the cost estimate, and I believe that's it. Like I said, it's very, very simple, very simple.
So any other questions? Was there I don't know if there was anything else we wanted to go through in there. But for those of you who have not done a program review, if you have more specific questions, or that was a really good question. There are resources needed sometimes that don't fall directly under us. I'd encourage you to just ask around or ask your supervisor or dean, because if that came to Tim or to me, we'd probably jump on it and say, hey, we need to research this. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see if this one's there.
All right, so the Sycamore building is used heavily by social science division, but other divisions use it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the hallways, when that building was remodeled, there was no budget for furnishings. And so many, many years ago when it opened up, there was nothing in the hallway for kids to sit on.
Oh,
So I grabbed discarded chairs from the junk pile, and then they just were destroyed. And then I noticed these nice new chairs in here. We got the rejects.
Oh, lovely.
But
Okay.
they're going to break down because they're really
Yeah.
too old, somebody thought they were too old to be useful here.
Yeah.
So we need to know who would pay for hallway furniture for that building. It was never budgeted originally.
Right. So there's a couple different mechanisms. Jennifer with academic services and for me with administrative services. Last year we developed an emergency, I call it fixtures, furniture, and equipment budget, FF&E. And basically we have an emergency budget that we can go to if a new classroom's formed and we need 30 desks or something like that. So a request could be made of her, but that is, to me, a very good request for above base resource because social sciences primarily uses the building.
Other divisions use it too?
Yeah, well, is there a primary, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
Own the building?
Yeah. But you'd be surprised. Requests do come from the divisions that use the building. We understand that you don't own it. Yeah. So you definitely could put it in there through that division. Yeah. I mean, not that you have to. Beyond that, I mean, those are those questions that come up all the time. Even repainting, recarpeting. The question that we hear again and again is, why do I need to ask for that through program review? We agree, so we're trying, but we haven't gotten there. This year, we are going to be requesting an ongoing request for painting refreshment. Because normally all we do is what we call a 20-year uplift. Something will be the same for 20 years, and then we go throughout the whole building and paint, carpet, and lighting, and things like that. So it's a little bit of a gray area, unfortunately, that's not clearly defined. But any other requests? Questions, I should say, requests. Anyone need money? Okay, yes. So budget committee, do you folks have anything that you think is important that we should add, having been through this for a few cycles?
I would like to request that you fill out the boxes thoughtfully because it's a lot of work. We read your program reviews. If you think no one in the district reads your program reviews, you're wrong. And certainly when we're going through and trying to thoughtfully think about and this and that, sometimes maybe we put in like a little bookmark, maybe a little, I'm going to come back to that. I'm sure you're not meaning to be sarcastic when you're filling in the field, but maybe you meant to go back and fill it in. So please be thoughtful, please be scientific, please provide us with data, please provide us with information, because I don't know what the theater needs, I don't know what risers are, I don't know what a shell is, unless it's on the beach, So you definitely want to give us lots of detail, because we absolutely do read through the program reviews. It's difficult to try to determine how to rank something, because we rank them as groups. Within our budget committee, we rank them as groups, and then we look over them together. So really be mindful that you're filling out all those fields completely, logically, scientifically, thoughtfully, because it's hard to honor a request if there's a lot of just sort of blank fields, or like I said, I assume it's mostly just little bookmarks, like, well, of course, little comments like that. It's like, I'm sure they meant to go back and fill it in. They didn't really need to be sarcastic. Because, the budget committee, we don't get compensated for this joy of going through and reading through everyone's program reviews. So if it's interesting reading, it makes it more pleasant. And it's very fun. It's fun to spend money. We really love to fund
Yeah.
all of it. We think it's all awesome. But we can't do that. So we have to sort of differentiate. And more details. Luckily, we had a student on the budget committee last year that knew the difference between risers and shells and was able to really elaborate on that. And we were like, oh my gosh, and so that was one of the things that kind of got swapped around because, of course you needed one versus the other, and no one on the budget committee knew except for the student. He actually knew. And said we had to go borrowing from other people, other schools or something, and I thought, we can't go borrowing from the high school, how embarrassing and stuff.
And one of the things on that was about safety. Riser and Michelle, what's that got to do with safety? And then he explained it. Well, if he hadn't been there,
Shell could collapse.
Give us a reason to rank yours higher.
Yeah, give us a reason to say yes.
Well, it's more of just know who your readers are.
Mhm.
So if you're in one area, you're talking to people that are not in your area. So you have to take into account your audience is really, really imperative in these things. So that, if, you know, for me, Shell and Riser,
Yeah.
25 years. Someone has zero idea, you need to speak to your audience. Your audience assume that they don't know anything about your area, and that's not being redundant. It's not being condescending at all. It's being thorough, as if you're going to write any other sort of research paper, and someone's going to read it outside of your content area.
Yeah, for those who may or may not know, we have in Budget Committee, 4 administrators from various areas, 4 faculty. We're missing one right now in case anyone's interested. One adjunct, we're missing one right now. I think we only have 2 classified, 1 confidential, 2 students, and myself. So, yeah. Well, wait, I count as one of the administration. So that's your audience. But for instance, on classified and admin, we're a little tech heavy, which is, we love it. That's just who was willing to join the committee. But if someone is over in food services or in the bookstore or in grounds, they're not getting much, as much representation. So, yeah. When? We are first and third, or am I second and fourth? You guys, today's the second Thursday? Yeah, second and fourth Thursday at 3 p.m. Visitors welcome, observers. So one of the things I forgot to say, we will notify a party. We actually were kind of bad at this the last 2 years. We will notify a party if it's deemed not feasible by either technology or facilities, so that they're not surprised, because we had a few that didn't find out. I thought the others were letting them know, they thought I was, and things like that. The other thing is, when we talk about letting your audience know what you're requesting, the first year we did this, I think we had 1 action from a department that had about 3 or 4 resources requested under it. So they labeled them resource or request number 1, resource request number 2, resource. Anyway, so the more descriptive information you can share with us, the easier it is for us to track things, find them, refer back to them, and such. So, any other questions? Program review, again, it is fairly intuitive, and it's part of your program review, and you're going to be coming up with actions anyway to further our district toward meeting our district objectives, or to meeting a student learning outcome or a service area outcome. And with those, you may need resources. So that's what this is all about. Yes?
Not a question, but maybe a question.
Oh, and I'm not repeating questions for the audience. Sorry.
In your program review, you are also putting your ongoing requests in your program review, and you do that as a separate process in February.
No, but I'm going to clarify that. Thank you. Actually, this is something that sometimes I think it's just hard to remember. And so I always like to refer to it as our resources are a 3-legged stool. 2 of those legs are in program review, but the third one is not. So one is staffing, any sort of staffing requests, faculty, classified, even management is in program review. And so that's also a resource request that comes out of program review related to an action. That's not what we're training about today. The second is above base, which is a one-time funding. That's what we're training on today. You may need one-time expenditures for your division, your department. The third is ongoing base budget, and that is not requested in program review, and not everyone knows that. I don't know if that's very clearly trained in our program review training, but and there was a lot of discussion that went into it, but it was decided to leave it out of program review. So that's, in a sense, governed by Administrative Procedure 3261. And all the management and I think department chairs and probably their assistants or secretaries will be receiving an email in February of each year. It comes from my department, and that says, this is how you request ongoing funds, and you need to submit it back to your, I don't remember if I said service area manager. We were just talking about this, Marshall. But I think it's to the vice president or president by the end of February. We take that to senior management, and we hash those out there. So Yeah. Any other questions? You guys were an easy audience today. Okay. Please feel free to email. Really, all of us on Budget Committee have become very familiar with this, except for our 2 students who are going to just love this year. And thanks so much for coming, folks.